it's time to take it back now. No more hiding, no more silence, this power is mine. I've cried through the dark, now I'm walking in light. This is her psychology, and baby, I'm right on time. Standing on my own, taking back my throne, where I fought to be. It's her psychology. I speak, I rise, I heal, unapologetically. This love, this life, this...
Hi, and thank you for joining us for episode 5 of the Her Psychology podcast. And this episode is titled The Endurance of Women in Long-Term Relationships. And the episode breakdown questions, why do women endure? Strength, conditioning, and the myth of putting up with it. Women have long been the emotional anchors of relationships, expected to heal, hold, nurture, and endure. But endurance is not the same as acceptance. Today, we explore her psychology, the emotional conditioning behind long-term relationships, and why society often confuses a woman's strength with her willingness to tolerate mistreatment. The episode dives into these powerful questions and answers them to unpack the emotional, cultural, and psychological layers behind women's endurance in relationships. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Bleuhatter.
And I am the Redhead, and we're going to jump right into it. I like the fact that you brought this episode idea to me because lately I have been listening to, and of course, there have been conversations mostly from men who say things like, well, my grandparents have been married for like 40 and 50 years, and my mom and dad have been married for 30 and 40 years. And I too come from a two-parent home and my parents were married until my father passed away. But why do you think it is often felt like a woman is supposed to endure difficult long-term relationships?
I think that it's systemic. I think that it's a societal pressure. Um, I feel that even historically, it might not have always been that way with different tribes. That's we might not know of these matriarchal societies where the women, this is like before the civilization, and they started taking over land and agriculture, because before, women were the ones who were gathering the food and teaching the different traditions, and teaching, even the women were the wisest in like the circles, and they would teach the women, and I remember even reading that there was shame when there was a man who wasn't doing his job, and the whole tribe would be like, okay, this guy's not doing his job, he needs to go out. But instead, now that we're in this more modernized and all these different things that force the women to have to depend on a man because of agriculture and because of the way that they build society, now you're forced into, now you're just alone and you don't have that support system. So the women has to present the family as, this is a unit, we're together, and that's successful. So she feels like she's the one that has to hold it together. And her feeling of holding it together is enduring whatever that person or that partner is throwing at her. And sometimes it could be violent, abusive, emotional, coercion in different ways. But it's also, a lot of women are not told how it really is. They're just told, get married, have a house, have kids, but you're not told that you're not going to get a lot of help, and that if you do end up going, raising your voice or getting upset, that you're not there's no actual like factual evidence of like, oh, you're for sure going to get a man that's not going to get aggressive and that's not going to get mad, because he can't handle all of these things, and you were never told that he's not going to be able to have a job and do the chores and cook and take you out or deal with any of that. It's going to be too overwhelming for him. So he's really set up to do the most minimal, and you're set up to do everything, and that's biologically it humans are not built that way, and women are not built to hold so much emotional and physical labor.
Yeah, I was going to say that also, with the fact that a lot of women are raised with that belief that commitment actually equals perseverance. So they are conditioned in a lot of ways to hold those families together, even when doing so costs them more so emotionally than it does the man. Do you think that endurance is the same as being passive?
Um, in a way, I think that women find different ways to survive. So, depending on your personality. So, for me, an example, if I was surviving in a toxic relationship, um, I resort to fawning, which is appeasing to whatever that person, the danger. So if that person is mad or upset, you're gonna like try to cheer them up, try to be the cheerleader, the support system. Um, another woman could just be very silent, very submissive, as one might say. But I think inherently it's built in to be like, okay, let me keep the peace, let me keep it, safe for the children and for myself, because that's what women biologically resort to, is keeping the peace, being nurturing, and enduring also for the children. The problem is like once you have the children, you're trapped because it doesn't matter what happens. Your body, most women, if they weren't, they didn't go through certain traumas, your body is so connected to that child having the best safety. So you in your mind, you're like, okay, so the best safe thing for the child is for both parents to be together and have that family unit, the nuclear family. That's what you've been conditioned to believe. But in fact, it's actually very detrimental for the child to see their mother in being tired, being abused, being neglected. In fact, there studies have been showing that um, children who've seen their mother depressed or suffering do not have like successful rates of life. That the children who see their mother happy have higher success. And there's no statistics showing anything about the male. So people say, well, the dad, it causes that. There's nothing showing anything about that. So it goes to show that actually the woman is the most important thing that we should be taking care of, but that's not what we're taught, but it's everywhere in nature. In the beehive, what are you taking care of? The queen bee. She's feeding, she's taking care of the whole hive, she's making the babies. It only makes sense for everyone to center the woman and to make sure that she is safe and taken care of. So it's all backwards because women endure and they endure so much pain, and the women are conditioned to think that they have to endure that pain for the children, but in fact it's very detrimental to the children, and then the cycle repeats because then the children sees their mother like that and they're like, oh, that's what I have to do. So then she does the same thing and sacrifices her, and she's like, oh, this is what motherhood looks like. The woman has to be tired and pain, putting everyone else first.
Say this. I was sitting here thinking, like, very deeply going into thought process while you were talking, and I was thinking about I never thought about my mother as being happy or unhappy because we didn't really see a side of her that was nurturing, that kind of showed how she didn't show up in how she felt on a daily basis. So, for instance, I'll give you an example to better understand. She would come home from
Hmm.
work and just go in her room and close the door. We didn't even see her anymore. And then when we
Oh.
did see her, she was getting ready for work to go do it all over again. So there was not really any time outside of weekends, and she worked on the weekends as well. So that we really saw her, at least to my recollection, I can't really speak for my siblings, so I guess I won't use the word we, but that I really saw her as I was growing up as a happy or a sad person. What I will say is that as an adult, I can see that she went through a lot of trauma because she's very manipulative.
Mm,
And in my opinion, my mother is a narcissist. I hear stories often from my siblings, even now, because I don't have a relationship with her and they do. And she came off very passive in her marriage to my father, who was also a passive person. He
mm,
was abusive to us as children, but I never witnessed him being abusive to my mom. I never witnessed either one of them smoking or drinking, never witnessed them cursing, never even heard my father raise his voice at my mother. And so, but I'm not, as an adult, ignorant or in any type of denial to understand that she was going through some type of abuse, whether
yeah.
it was psychological. She was. And it was behind closed doors because even we didn't see it as the children. And so I think when somebody is passive in these situations, that is actually silence. And a lot of women can endure that because they're labeled strong. But let's be honest, inside there is a form of weakness. And that weakness is not being able to speak out and stand up for yourself. And so that kind of segues into my next question. How do you feel childhood conditioning impacts a woman's relationship endurance?
I think it impacts it greatly. Like that kind of what I said before. In fact, I feel it in myself to where I had witnessed my mom always working, suffering, like tired, broke, well, just cleaning, stressed out. And so she was always putting everybody else first too. And as without subconsciously, like being a kid, that's how I felt like I had to be. And also because seeing her not being able to um pay certain bills, or like we go to the grocery store, she had to put food back, and that I when I observed that, it always made me really sad. So I try to make myself less. For example, I didn't want to eat more, or I try to be like, I don't want this, I don't want that. So that led on into adulthood where it's very easy for me to go without days without eating, or um not using the restroom because whatever, like put other people first, and like giving myself a UTI because I'm like an adult working and doing all these other things for people at work, and I won't, put myself first and be like, oh, you can take a break really quick. And so that in seeing your parent endure that, and then creating that endurance as a child, and then that carrying on into adulthood without even realizing, also feeling like as a mother and as a potential wife, like, oh, seeing all these other successful marriages, there's something internally that makes you feel like, oh, if they could do it, I can do it. Like, what aren't you doing? Why aren't you making this work? Like, you're not, um, maybe it's your fault. You're not enduring as much, until I finally had to let that go and be like, it doesn't have to be this hard, you know? But as a kid, I definitely did feel like I subconsciously picked up that feeling of having endurance in positions which might have been more toxic, but also I don't know. I think that there is that stigma of feeling like if you keep going through it, you're strong. Like, oh, you're so strong. Oh, you survived this, or like, um, when it's actually not a good thing, especially in our culture. In our Mexican culture, we very much celebrate people who just work really hard when but also it makes a lot of people us like just hyper vigilant, never able to rest. And so you pick up a lot of illnesses, and you pick up a lot of bad habits because you don't actually take care of yourself. You think in your head you're being productive, you're working, you're either a workaholic, you're always cleaning, you're always doing things, but your health is declining because you're not resting, you're not sleeping, and you almost feel like it's a badge of honor, like, oh yeah, like I did that, I didn't eat, I sacrificed this, like I, put everyone first, put food on the table, decorated everything, everyone has lunch, but you didn't get a doctor's appointment, you didn't take a shower, you didn't do what you had to do. And a lot of the times you're just performing really, but inside you're just in so much turmoil. You're just tired. And a lot of women I feel just become very stagnant and almost like they're not even there. They're just kind of like going through the motions. Like I'm like, you're not, you're just like you're just your answers are robotic. You're like, yeah, this is, and I'm just like I'm like, I can't.
I was going to say that a lot of women who actually do push through, they do often inherit that model that, I have to just keep going, I have to keep going without questioning whether or not it serves them. I myself have been working, I think, since I was 14 years old. And there have been times where my bosses have had to say, hey, it's time to cut the light out. It's time to go home. Or my daughter used to make a joke all the time, Mom, they're going to come into work and find you dead at your desk because you work so much. And I think a lot of us don't know that we're dealing with ADHD and we're dealing with anxiety. And the ways that we combat it a lot of times is we're using our minds constantly. We're constantly trying to find something to do to busy the mind, not understanding that that is a illness and that we should be paying attention to that illness. But because we watched our mothers do it, we're thinking that it's just a way of life. Internally, we can feel it and we know, something is not right. I do not like the way that this makes me feel. I feel overwhelmed. We can say that out loud. But a lot of times we don't talk about it as women because we feel like if we do say, I need help, we're looked at as weak. And I don't think men think we think like that as women at times. I think they think we have some type of superhuman strength and that we're expected to just endure any and everything that they throw at us because that's what they've watched the people before them being women in their lives do. Why do men assume that women should just put up with anything?
I think they assume it because that's all they see around. They see it, not only do they see it in their own families, but the last, century or so, but also in the movies, like it's implemented everywhere. And the psychology of music, of media, of your peers, of what you're seeing at school, like I've seen so many things that I in no way, shape, or form taught my son. And no matter how much I've like tried to protect him with a lot of the things, putting him either in homeschool, charter schools, no matter what, somehow he has learned or picked up
Mhm.
these societal like norms because it's so ingrained in every aspect of life, whether it's at church, at these institutions, at school, in sports, in all the music that you speak, the way that you speak about women. Um, and you just you see them in movies and you see all these stories, you see it in books, you see it in the media, and then now that women are getting the chance to just like rest because our generation, even like millennials and Gen Z, like we didn't have the same like struggles as our parents before us. We're like now we're able to like we're still all stressed out and broke and they're still screwing us over, but we have a little bit more than the generation before to actually have some time to think, stop and think and be like, wait, what's going on? And we're all finding out that our mothers were not a lot of our mothers were not very they're not very honest about what it really is like. And we're smarter. Not only are we smarter, but we're sarcastic. We're smartasses. We're like, I'm not gonna do that. Like, you know? And so a lot of millennials, or even younger are struggling with like, okay, well, if this is how it's gonna be, I just don't want to do it for the women. And the men are struggling because they're like, wait, but everyone else has been doing it. Like that all the women have all my grandmas and aunties, everyone has been, enduring this. Like, and so I think it's really hard for them because not only are women realizing that they're not going to, put up with it, but they're realizing that it's gonna be a lot of work. And I mean, most of the men don't want to do the work. They already, that's the reason they're in this position to begin with. So I think that it's really hard for them because they're seeing it historically, they've seen it in their own families, and they just don't understand. They really believe that something is wrong with the women that don't just want to get married and be like, just do what everyone else has been doing. So they're coming up with things, even in the news, they're like, oh, are the girls being manipulated? Like, is it a cult? Like, what is it? Like, they can't fathom that just like, no, women are just smarter or they're just like, they're learning things, they're educating themselves. And so if it's dangerous to educate a woman, and that once that woman is educated, she makes smarter choices and she doesn't have a baby fast and she doesn't get married with you fast, that's a harmful thing. So you're essentially saying that the girls need to be dumb so they can get with you.
It's the reverse
So,
psychology for me.
so what's going on here?
Even that comment that the guy makes at the beginning, if men are really the problem, why don't y'all just leave us alone? That's reverse psychology within itself, because you know damn well women are not going after men in the manner that men are going after women. This 40 plus video series that she has, with all of these men just walking up on random women in the park, at the grocery store, in the movie line, like just walking down the road in your neighborhood. And he had the audacity. I can't remember his name right now, but I will have his name at the beginning of that episode, the guy who started this all. Do you think emotional labor is part of why women stay? Because you see the
Yeah.
potential in him and you know he can do better, you feel like you have to save him. And so then your shoulder becomes the emotional responsibility for the relationship. Even when men don't reciprocate the same thing to you, do you feel like emotional labor is part of why women stay when they want that relationship to work with viewing his potential?
I think that's a really huge reason. In fact, I feel like I even struggle with that. Like it once I'm like, okay, and then you see them, you're like, oh, you just like you can't help but like wanting to help. So
Hmm.
it's like I think it's just like this innate thing in women. Like they're like, oh, like they just, they're built to help, emotionally, and they're just emotionally more intelligent. So of course they're gonna see something and they're gonna want to fix it. Um, but even I think it's also like this really big hope. Like I think women are very, very much hopeless romantics. And it's instilled in us since we were little with the Disney movies, with the princesses. When we all girl and talk, we all talk, we're all talking about a boy because we think it's gonna be this like magical thing, right? Like, oh,
Hmm.
he's this, he's that. And so you just get so excited about the romanticism of it, and then you want it to work so bad because especially when you've already invested.
Hmm.
So I think it's harder when you invested so much time in it and you see little changes. And so this is what I've noticed with other women that I've talked to, that I see them in a toxic relationship. I see them very depressed, very tired. And a lot of times they're telling me without realizing, because they're trying to convince me, oh, well, my man's good, because like they think just because I'm critical and I'm saying things that I'm a man hater, but I'm just a realist. I'm like, no, I just see things for the for what it is. And so a lot of times it's almost like they're defending, but in their defense, they're kind of saying, well, he has changed. And this is what I noticed they'll say too. I've learned to let go of those things. So that's not true. What I'm hearing them say is, I've abandoned this part of myself that that's my boundary that makes me happy. Whether it's like for them, they want a clean kitchen or they want their husband to put the seat down and not leave like urine all over. That's a boundary for them. And they keep nagging and nagging and asking. They become the nagger, they become the horrible nagging wife. And so they don't want to be that person. They want this beautiful princess. They want their man to be like attracted to them. But when they become the nag, so instead of like fighting for what they need, they let go because they see that the man's not gonna be the one, so they do the work, and they're like, "Okay, well, I've just learned," and that's what they'll tell me, "It's not a big deal. I've just learned to let go." And I'm like, it seems like more so you've let go of yourself to make this work
Hmm.
because you want it, because you have that hope, that dream, and you're putting that emotional labor um into it by letting go of yourself, letting go of your needs and your boundaries. And so that that's essentially what I feel when it comes to um women feeling like that, when it comes to like the emotional labor aspect of it, especially with the children. They're never gonna feel like, oh, if I leave him with the kids, like he's not gonna be able to do it. So they feel like they have to stay there and be like, I can't just leave this person. I already put this much work into it. And um how is he gonna do it without me? Because you already know he's not gonna do the work. And even if they do the work, it's gonna take so much out of them, and they're not gonna do it for you. They're not gonna do it for themselves. And in fact, most of the times when they do decide to do it, be like, oh, okay, I'm gonna go into therapy. It's because your wife told you to. It's because you're in this marriage. It's very rare that a man is by himself and he decides that he's going to get a healthy diet. He's going to get his shit together. He's going to go to therapy. He's going to find out why he has so much anger and pain inside of him and why his lineage is the way it is. They're not doing that.
I was thinking, my ex-husband told me one time he dated an older woman. He's always dated older women, and we're the same age. But I guess, I had always dated older guys, so that's something that we had in common. So he told me one time that his ex-girlfriend used to be in an abusive relationship, and I guess this whole conversation should have been a red flag. If I'm thinking about it now, it definitely was a red flag. But whatever, we're here now. He's an ex. He told me that she was abused so much that when she got with him, she would allow him to just come in and out. He didn't say it in this way, but this is me paraphrasing it. He was saying what he actually said was he could come and go as he pleased when he was leaving and coming to her house, because to him, he was a good man. To her, I'm sorry, he was a good man because he wasn't abusing her.
Hmm.
And so that got me to thinking, now that I'm older, with the education, having had that experience, that's why so many men think that they're a good men, because they hear stories from your past about the men that you've dated, and then they compare themselves to how that man is, and they'll say, well, because I'm not doing this, that makes me a good man. But it doesn't, because the fact that you're having to compare yourself to something that he did to even say whether or not you are a good or bad man, that speaks volumes. And so when he said that to me early on in the relationship, well over 20 years ago, because that's when it was very early on. We weren't even in a relationship at that time. I think we were just dating. And I think about him saying that now, he really thought he was a good man because he wasn't putting his hands on her. But he was very much abusive in other ways because I was married to him. And so, although he may not have been physically abusive, he could be verbally abusive. He could be a gaslighter. He was very manipulative. He lied a whole lot. And I believe he's a narcissist, now that I truly know what narcissism is. So, just because you may not be doing one thing and it's looked at as bad and you're doing something else, that still does not make you a good man, because I truly feel that good is performative. It is for the benefit of. And the only difference to me between a good man is a bad man and a bad man is the choice to be a good man. If there were no laws in place and men could just do what they want to do, you would truly be able to see how many good men there really are. That's my rant. I don't know why came out at that moment, but I've thought about him saying that to me several times since I've been speaking to women and doing the show. And a lot of men think like that. A lot of men think that they are good men because they're not doing this. And you're passive aggressive as a man and you speak in a lower tone. That means you're not delivering disrespect. You are delivering disrespect, one, because you're being manipulative. That ain't even who you are. You're pretending to be something. And no soon as you trigger them, you see the mask fall in 4K. But they slivered in the room and presented themselves as something totally different. The things that I went through behind closed doors with my ex and his behavior, I don't know that his family would not have believed it or would not believe it, because I don't talk to them about any of these things, if they didn't witness for it for themselves or had not already experienced it. And I do know that there had been some experiences. So people know their family, though. You don't have to tell them their family. They pretend not to know, but they know.
Unless they're like those pick-me's too that are like, "Ah," or like, well, what did you do?
Trust me, I am very much a doer and not a sayer. And had I done anything, you'd be reading about me in the paper. And here we are. I'm here
It's
fighting
so
for goodness.
crazy.
Goodness.
They will. But they will say things like that. And it's always like that. They're like, I've heard men be like, um, well, I'm working. And it's just like, that's it.
So
Oh, well, you got a job. Congratulations.
you think I'm dressed up like this going to go eat ice cream every day? I have a job too. What is your point? Question for you. Why do you feel like married women only praise the good about their marriages and not acknowledge the pain behind what they go through? Why do you think that is?
I think it has to do with self-preservation because when you become isolated in a marriage that's toxic, it you are also protecting yourself and your identity and your facade and your, you know, whatever it is, your whole unit. And I think that if a person already goes into a marriage and relationship with having any self-confidence or having their own friends, their own hobbies, their own things, then very often you become enmeshed.
Mm,
So his failures are your failures, his success is your success. And if and God forbid the wife has isn't working and she's only there to feed him and cook for him, then it becomes even harder because your whole identity in life is just serving this man, feeding him, and then if he was to, leave you or do something, you're left, with nothing. So a lot of the times you're also protecting yourself, your survival. Um, but in other cases, I see that these women are protecting the idea of your family. And once you open that bag of worms, it's like they're afraid to be like, oh, it's actually not so pretty. And they could often become like defensive,
hmm
like threatened. So that's when I know it is survival based too, because let's say I was to like make a comment and depending on how they would react and be like, well, my husband, I was like, oh, okay, well, sorry. And it's because, so I feel that there's some kind of like You know, like a lioness, kind of like she's in her survival mode, so subconsciously she has to protect it and kind of like put you down, like, oh, well, you know, you know how often they think like if you're single or if you're either, oh, well, you've been hurt, you're traumatized, or you didn't choose good enough, you know, whatever are the cases. So I feel like a lot of the times they don't say anything because you are also you're not only convincing the people, you're convincing yourself. Because I see them do it, like when I'm talking to them, and they're like literally trying, like convincing themselves of the facade, like, no, everything's good, like I'm not. Because once you do, I feel like then you have to face it. Then you can't, like, then you can't lie. You're like, once you bring it out, oh, well, he beat you. Well, what happened with that? You know, did he go to therapy? And then it's like once you bring out that back, you know what I mean? Then it's like you can't bring it back. Like, no, well, we saw, you said, you know?
I
So,
think a lot of it also is to save face, like you said, because I think about how people will get into relationships and people will warn them about that person. And they'll be
mhm,
like, I don't think you need to be with that person. And they just ride or die wants to be with them. And then once they get into that relationship with them and everything that everybody said comes out to be true, they cannot come back out and say you were right because people are so arrogant. They're so prideful and they're so set in their ego that when something goes wrong, they care more about how they are perceived once that went wrong than what people initially told you to begin with, which is not to do it. It's okay to say, I admit I did something wrong. You know what? That was the wrong mistake. I shouldn't have been in that relationship as long as I was in that relationship. But before you go against the crowd of judgment, you would rather go against the crowd of abuse. And to me,
mhm,
that's crazy. I'm not saving face to be beat on. Right? I'm not doing this for the family. No amount of love that I have for my children or my family will make me stay in a relationship where I am being abused and mistreated. I came from an abusive household. That is not going to be my life. I'm not going to come from that and continue that on. When you know better, you should actually be doing better. And I posted something online, I think it was yesterday or today, where I said that a lot of people who use logic, they don't have to know that a stove is hot once they burn their hands one time. When you have gone through the fire, you are able to face the flame. So you don't have to teach certain people the same lesson over and over. Some people get it the first time. And then when you get it the first time, you are judged for that by the when you choose better and you actually choose better, which is yourself or no one at all, then you're judged for choosing better. But if I go through a bad relationship where it almost unalived me, and I'm not saying that's my story because it's absolutely not, but it is a lot of people's story. A lot of people
mhm,
make it alive from domestic violence relationships.
mhm.
And once you make it out of something like that and you've lived through something, you've experienced something like that, you are able to see the red flags. Some people do get into other relationships and they go through it over and over and over again until something in their soul awakens and say no more. But most people don't get into abusive relationships and then get out of them and continue to jump back and forth into abusive relationships. You usually see that person jumping into that same abusive relationship over and over until they end, until it ends. I'm not saying this never happens. I'm saying it's more probable that you're going to see the same two people in an abusive relationship on and on and on again until they cut it off before you'll see one person just continually jump to abusive relationships because most people don't need to keep burning their hands on the stove to understand that it's hot. And I think that, like you said, it is to save face or is to say that I'm doing this for the family because you're trying to prioritize stability over your emotional well-being because you believe that that sacrifice is somehow protecting your children. When in actuality, you staying in that situation is far more harmful than you leaving. Why do you think women feel guilty for wanting more?
I think that I don't know. I really feel like they're conditioned to feel like they should be humble. And a woman who wants more is like spoiled. She's a diva. She's, a gold digger. In fact, I remember that growing up. And I like when I look back at it, I'm like, oh my God, like what was wrong with me? Why was I thinking this way? So in my head, I was always just like, oh, just be the most humblest. Like you have to be like super humble. And I was like, I even remember thinking this in my mind, like that when I was to be attracted to a male or a guy, that I would like not expect anything. And I really thought that I was like, oh, like I'm so easy, like I really thought that was even like a good attribute. Like, oh, look, I'm so easy. Like, I don't even want anything. I don't even like flowers. Like, I like going to the thrift. I don't even like jewelry, like all these things. Like, I felt that were good attributes to have. Um, so even in my head, I was just like, what? So, till this day, I find myself having a hard time to where I fight it, and it'll be the simplest things. Like, um, I want to have a drink, like bring this drink up to me. And it's just like, oh, like it's okay for you to ask for that. That doesn't mean that, I have to fight the feeling like, oh, I'm spoiled, like those narratives and being like, the less that you ask for, the less that you need, the better woman that you are. And a good woman is humble. A good woman serves. A good woman is patient. A good woman is silent. A good woman is forgiving. And I think that's very a big one also in religion is that you train women to be so, so, so submissive, forgiving. And so it's ingrained in your head. And I'm like, oh, I have to forgive everything. And like, doesn't matter what it is. And I felt like the king of the world because I would be so good at like in my head, like, oh, I forgave this really horrible thing. Like, wow, like I'm gonna be like first in line to the gates, of heaven or something. So I think it's a mixture of systematic conditioning, religious, and your family, like however you grew up in. So also society, like what do you hear when women ask for more? Those things, right? That are like, you're a gold digger, you're a diva, like, oh my God, you're spoiled, you want this, you want that. When in fact, we're seeing that it's the males that are gold diggers and they want to be queens and princesses and they want to be the prize. So it's all kind of mixed up, but I feel like it definitely has to do with that. Like, and I even feel it in myself. So I know for a fact that there's something societally like ingrained in us as women. And I think it happens in every culture, whether you grew up in religion or not. I think that it's just I don't know, like it's through the teachers, through other women. And I think the only way we can change that is it just being the change so that the girls that are in our position now will be like, "Oh, well, I saw her like she she asked for the most instead of the bare minimum." And then we ask for the bare minimum and we get the bare minimum from these men. And we just stay there. In fact, once you keep doing that for so many years and then you're like, I don't want this anymore, when you try to ask for more, it feels so crazy. It feels crazy for you, for crazy for them, like, what? Like, where did this come from? And they have no idea that you've been suffering for years, maybe being like, I've been wanting this. I just didn't feel like I could ask. I've just been enduring the bare minimum for so long. And now I don't want to. I want more. And they're like, where did this come from? I was like, because they have no idea that their partner has been enduring in pain with all their BS, whether the mental and emotional labor, and then the kids grow up and they don't know, like, what happened? Why is my wife leaving me? Like, what happened? Like, they really haven't been paying attention. They really, most of these men don't realize that their women are internalizing and just in suffering through this pain of just enduring their incompetence, because the hope of love, the hope of romance, the hope for a family, the hope for that little like white picket fence, the Disney movie dream, like thinking that that's the only way of happiness and success in this life.
Feel like the men are aware. I feel like when you see them crash out the way that you see them crash out, it is because they know we're at the end of the line. I have rode this train with you all the way up until this point, and now that you cannot convince me and manipulate me to stay or come back to you, now you want to go in full mode crash out. Whether it be take my life, beat me until unalivement, or leave me broke and destitute on the side of the road because you cannot further manipulate me. I think that they do know.
Or
I
they'll even what is it called? Sorry. They'll even threat to hurt themselves to try
Yes.
to that too.
I think that even in saying all of that, when you look at leadership, one of the things that you have to be able to do as a leader is take constructive criticism. Not every leader is going to be able to lead you in the correct direction all the time, because no one person knows everything. And men seem to think that leadership is gender specific. And I think that leadership is more capability specific. What are you capable of? What am I capable of? And anytime you get into a situation with a leader and you cannot collaborate with them nor communicate if you feel like the direction that we're going in may veer us off course, then and you can't do that, that is not the type of leader that you need to follow. And the problem is a lot of men have not been a leader in any other aspect of their life. They haven't been able to lead themselves off of the couch in the living room playing the PS5. They have not been able to lead themselves into a shower to properly wash. They have not been able to lead themselves into the bathroom to practice proper hygiene. Yet they will get into a relationship with a fully functioning human being who met them as a whole person with a home, a car, a degree, all of these things. And now you feel like you need to lead me when I'm in a higher position than you are. When I say higher position, I don't mean hierarchy as far as I'm a woman and I'm here and you're a man and I'm here. It's however you view that. But I mean, I have a car and a home and you're laying on the couch. You're riding the bus. If I'm already in a better position than you are when we met, why do you feel like I need to listen to you to be led? Shouldn't you probably listen to me? And so when you can only be the leader and never the follower, when you can only be the driver of the car and never the passenger, that is a red flag that is not someone who you need to lay down with. That is not someone that you need to go into partnership with. Because if I only have to listen to you all the time, this is probably not going to work, because no one person, not even a man, knows everything. Why do you feel that it is harder for women to leave than to stay?
Leaving is the hardest thing for women because of all of the reasons. There is no backup plan for women, which I want to talk about because later I want to do an episode about that, because there needs to be more resources. If society or government, no one's going to make it, I think we should make it on our own. If 1 out of 3 women experience either assault, abuse globally, we're talking about billions of women experiencing this. Why isn't there more resources for women when they're experiencing this to get to safety, to get out of it? If all of society, if the United States of America is about children, pro-life, about the women and children, why isn't there something in place to protect the women and children? So that is the reason why it's hard for them to leave, because you don't have a financial support, you don't have that emotional support, you're already exhausted. Most of these women are already living single mom lives in a marriage household, and that's what a lot of people don't realize. It's they're like, oh, these single moms, these single moms. Most moms are single moms because the men are not doing anything. They're just sitting
Even the
there.
married ones.
That's what I'm saying. Most the women that are married, most of them are single. It's very rare that you're gonna find it's very extremely rare. I yet to find, see a woman that is in a marriage that looks rested, that doesn't look exhausted and stressed and in a marriage. And you're usually gonna see that mostly in the celebrity life because you have that young wife, or you know what I mean? She's just there for the money and she's relaxing. But in normal cases, that's not happening. And I feel like it's the financial, you're not getting the financial stability. You don't know what's going to happen to the kids. And then you're just like, oh, am I destabilizing them? Where is your support if your family's already toxic? So a lot of the time, the women have to choose, do I go back into a toxic environment with my family? And it's a cycle because the reason why you even left that home and got pregnant with a man who beats you is because you were abused and you grew up in that toxic family. Then your only way out is to get out and be with this man. And then so you have that choice. Do I go back here? The whole reason why you even got into that relationship in the first place is because you grew up in a toxic environment and you thought that's the only thing you deserve because that's the only thing you know. So that's the only thing you attract until you heal yourself. And so eventually the women is going to stay because it's safer. She doesn't know what to do. Either these are the reasons if you don't have a degree or if you don't have financial backing and if you don't have your family's already toxic, you don't have any friends, what really is the options for women? So it does take a lot, and it
Mhm.
takes the fear of the unknown, which is biologically a hard thing for a woman to do. So essentially, when a woman leaves, she has to fight everything that's in her body, everything, the society, every single thing in her skin and her body. She has to fight that and do it. And she has to actually think in her head that this is going to be better for her kids because you have to fight the feeling of like, oh, am I a bad mom? Am I going to destabilize them? Is this going to be worse for them? Oh, they need their dad, um, and whatnot. And you have to be strong and be firm and fight all of those thoughts, all of those doubts, all of those fears, and just trust and really just trust in yourself and trust in God and make those steps. But honestly, once you do get out of there, it's going to be extremely hard, but every step going up is just going to make you stronger. And essentially, once a woman does do that, then that's when she ends the cycle, either in her lineage, the cycle of abuse, or in that relationship. Because once you have the confidence to leave, you're not going to attract that again because you already built yourself up. And the person that accepted that abuse was a weak person. You're not that person anymore because you left. So why would you attract that again? And I feel like that's what it takes, but it's extremely difficult. I don't necessarily like blame the women. I try to understand it, but is every single thing you can think of is not on their side. So the odds are against them. And it's just it's like the main thing that frustrates me because I'll see women and I'm just like, "Oh my God, just want her to get out." But I also don't have the answers, you know? You want them to leave, but it's like, do you have a house for them? Are you gonna do this? You know what I mean? Like, I don't always have the answers, but I do know that they deserve better and that somehow, I don't know how, but somehow the universe will provide if you make that move. And if you love yourself enough to attract good things and believe that good things can happen to you, I really do believe that there's hope for these women. I just feel like we need more systems so that they can have an easier way to get out. Like that movie, Get Out.
I agree. I was watching a clip yesterday, and the clip was about Ray J, Brandy's brother. And he was sitting online, I guess on a podcast, Twitch or whatever. You know, you always gonna be embarrassed out loud. And he had told the girl that he was dating that he was not in love with her and that he would never love her. And I think that at that moment, I would have gotten up and walked away. That's me though. I would have gotten up because I would have realized that I don't need this man to tell me this twice.
Mm-mm.
I was once married to a man that told me I should have told him to go get a job because I was actually supporting him wanting to go into business with his college roomies. And the minute that things weren't taken off the way that he thought they were, or the way he thought they should, he looked at me and somehow blamed me for not telling him to go get a job when I thought I was doing a good thing by supporting his future or his dreams. And from that moment on, you ain't never had to tell me as a woman what I'm gonna put up with a man and what he should be doing. Because you cannot please these men. They have a problem with you supporting them and they have a problem when you don't support them. So I just don't do anything. Do whatever it is that you feel like you want to do. And if it's cohesive and sufficient for your life, then, and I'm with you, I'm all for it. But I'm never going to be the person that tries to tell you what to do or not to do, or even go to the max of putting 100% support behind something unless I know for certain that this is something you're going to see all the way through and that whatever situation you embark upon is not going to be my fault because it was absolutely your decision. Based on what you said, sometimes we support the bad behavior longer than we should because we see that potential in our partner. And we kind of feel responsible for helping them reach the milestones, which is why I was trying to support my ex-husband. We had just moved to Houston. He moved in with his friends. I moved there, got my own place, had 2 jobs. He wasn't even working at the time. And I was really supporting him financially. He would come to my house and he would eat when he wouldn't have food because we didn't live together. We were just dating. And when he stood in the rain and said to me, "You should have just told me to get a job because your life was going opposite of what you thought," I found that to be very crazy. And from that moment on, I did not take my foot off of his neck. Every time he did something that looked like he was getting ready to fuck it up, I had something to say. Because when I wasn't saying anything and you were complaining about your mother nagging you, I was being supportive. And because you couldn't take out your frustration on her for nagging you, you took it out on me for supporting you. And he never had to say anything to me like that again, because from that moment on, I played the person that I should have been the entire time. I don't play with
Do you
men
feel
when it
like,
comes to help me build and all of that, because I did that and I
yeah.
tried it. And then I got blamed for being the person that did that. So I no longer, that's not my job. Either you gonna come to me already together, matching me and or having more than what I have, or just don't come at all, because you can choose someone that's on your level. The problem is people go out here going for the gold that they're not going to even have, they're never going to have access to, because you're asking God or the universe or whatever it is that you praise or pray to give you something you're not even that, or give you something that you're not ready for. And I think that when women do that, we shape men's tolerance and we shape our own tolerance because we're rewarding them for bad behavior and not even helping us hold the family together.
Mhm. So I heard this quote that my sister was talking about. She said it was gonna make us sad, but it's relevant to what we're talking about. It's very simple. She just said that it says the people who stay in toxic relationships and with the partner are the same people who are waiting for their parents to change.
Mm.
And it really hit because I was like, wow. It had made her cry because it was just kind of like seeing how you're still hoping you're staying, and then like kind of remembering that feeling when you were a kid, like, hoping that your parent would either stop hitting you or maybe that your parent would love you more, give you attention, and how that carries on. So that's,
Wow. That's kind of that was a little deep.
yeah,
Because
right?
it causes you to think about your childhood.
Mhm.
I can so see that in that quote.
Right?
I can so see that. It made me like, as soon as you said, I was like, oh, anytime I hear something that's kind of profound to me or something that I wouldn't think of probably in that way, I usually do this little, oh, my light bulb goes off and then my head starts
Yeah.
going with my light bulb. Um, I think we had a couple of more questions, and I wanted to ask, especially this question because this is important. What do you think women need to do to unlearn that we should be enduring struggle, enduring pain, and enduring sacrifice to stay in a relationship or have a piece of a man? What do you think we need to unlearn about that process?
I think that it starts with self-love, self-confidence, but also take away the idea that endurance is means you're a good person, you're a good woman, you're patient.
Mhm.
That they need to what we need to do is switch that in the brain to being like, when you're enduring, you're hurting yourself and you're hurting your children, you're hurting your family. And that needs to just go into women's brains so they could switch it from, because this is I think it's also a man-made construct for us to think, and so we
Mhm.
need to all switch it, pass it on to each other, um to unlearn that idea of, if you endure this, then you're keeping the family safe, then you're keeping the marriage alive, then you're doing your part. And once you switch that to, this is hurting your children, you enduring this is showing them that they should endure it as well. And they're also going to attract toxic relationships. Do you want your children to end up, And all women, all mothers don't want that. So, like, once you make it about that, that's going to help them because it's so hard for women to think of themselves. So I feel like you literally have to make it about the kids, because when I tried this with the women that I speak to, um they became very defensive and were like, "No, it's like about the kids, And it's like, it's not about me. It's like, okay, but when these kids grow up and become adults themselves, they're gonna do that. So you're saying your little daughter right there, your little cute little 5-year-old girl, you're telling her to want less, to want more, to want less, to ask for less, and to endure pain. And it's like they're not connecting that. So once they connect it, do see what you're doing right now. You're enduring this abuse, you're enduring all this labor. Do you want that for your little girl? So it's kind of like they need to see that parallel, because in their head, they're like, I'm enduring this, I'm doing this for my little girl, I'm being the best. And so once you switch that, I really think that will really help. Um, if they don't have any children, that I feel like it would even be harder, because the women have to find self-worth in themselves. They really have to stop believing that things need to be hard, that it needs to be painful, that it needs to be difficult. because a relationship does not have to be extremely hard and abusive, and you do not need to be enduring um, all these hardships. So I think really is that switch of seeing how um self-love and not how you're saying unlearning their endurance is actually detrimental. So they need to realize that that's actually very hurtful what you're doing.
The only thing that I would say to that is that what they need to learn is that suffering is not a requirement for love.
Mm-hmm.
And that every time you pour something into a person, you should not walk away feeling drained. If I am able to fill someone's cup halfway, they should be able to return the favor. If you're the only one that's giving and you're not receiving, then you're probably not in the healthiest form of a relationship, which means that you're not going to have healthy endurance, because there is a such thing as healthy endurance.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm going to end it on healthy endurance and ask you for your final words on that with your closing
Okay.
remarks. I'll give my affirmation and my closing remarks after.
I think healthy endurance looks like somebody meeting you in the middle. Like, if you see that there's a problem in the relationship, whether it's like communication, there's someone has an anxious attachment, another person has avoidant attachment. The healthy endurance would be that not only the woman in that relationship is the one like, okay, I see this, we're not being able to talk to each other, let's go to therapy. Healthy endurance would be the other person be like, you know what, you're right. And I got this book that has to do with like these relationships. I'm gonna do the work too because I know that I have this, so I'll help on this front. And
Mhm.
so you know that you have a problem in your relationship, but the healthy thing is that the other person is acknowledging it, their part in it, and they're working on it to make it better. So it's not necessarily like um you're just enduring all of this and that person is taking and taking like you said, but that you're both mutually working on something that's hard, because there are both relationships where it's like the husband and the wife both came from toxic relationships, so they're both gonna have to do the work and it's gonna be hard. But that is the healthy endurance, that what the other person, whether it's the woman or the man, isn't just like putting all of their traumas on the other. They're both like, okay, if we want this to work, we need to do the work, we need to go to therapy, we need to unlearn these unhealthy habits. So I think that's what it looks like to me. And it's like being communicative, voicing your needs, voicing your boundaries. That is healthy endurance to me. But being silent, being alone, doing it all on your own, that's not, that is not sustainable for anyone.
Okay. I think that for me to end that would be healthy endurance is the kind that grows people and not the kind that breaks them. So if you're in a situation where you feel like you are broken and you cannot rise above it, you're probably enduring in an unhealthy way. This is my affirmation for women reclaiming themselves. My endurance is a strength, not a sentence. I honor what I have survived, and I choose love that honors me back. I am worthy of peace, respect, and partnership, not pain. And these are my closing remarks. Women have been conditioned to hold families together, maintain emotional stability, and endure streams in silence. But endurance doesn't define a woman's worth, it reveals her strength. Still, that strength must be honored, not exploited. Men must unlearn the belief that women are built to handle anything, and women must unlearn the belief that handling anything is the price of love. Remember, you don't owe anyone your suffering. Your endurance was survival, but your future can be freedom. Here are some books to go along with the episode today: Healing, Psychology, and Feminine Strength, Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes, The Body Keeps the Score, Bessel van der Kolk, Set Boundaries, Find Peace, Nidra Glover, and All About Love by Bell Hooks. I am the Redhead 47. Thank you for joining us today. Signing off.